Jay here for Stretford, Paddock, and this is a special Tier 1 interview with Laurie Whitwell from The Athletic in Thailand. As you can see, well, you might not know, but we are in Thailand. Laurie, thanks for coming back on the channel. Good to see you.
Cheers for having me, Jay.
Yeah, let's start with last night. With time recording, this is after the game against Liverpool. 4-0 against Liverpool. Don't want to get carried away, but, you know, we're going to win a lot now, so that's obvious. What did you make of the game? What do you think we can take from it?
Yeah, I think, as everyone said, listen, it's a friendly. Liverpool changed their team, 3 different teams over 90 minutes. One of them was obviously very youthful, which is, I think, probably when United put the foot down and scored most of the goals. But at the same token, a lot of encouragement. You had Jadon Sancho on the right, Marcus Rashford on the left, which was kind of always the idea originally when Sancho was bought. Can Ten Hag actually get them playing at their best in those positions? It'd be great if he could do, because I think you sort of saw the potential of it last night. Both real intensity in their pressing. Sancho looked like he was having an absolute ball, by the way, 24 hours after being called out by Ten Hag very audibly in the training for not doing what he wanted. So he sort of looked to be having real good fun. Anthony Martial pressing from the front as well. We saw that, I think, last at the Etihad, didn't we? Like March 2021, where we're waiting for that to come again. Can he actually do that now? Properly on a sustained basis. It felt like that was a bit of an opening of the door, though, for him. Obviously, with the Cristiano Ronaldo situation being unresolved, clearly he's the kind of number one centre forward on this tour. I just thought overall it was a really kind of encouraging performance. And even you got the young lads, didn't you? Charlie Savage and Zidane Iqbal at the end. 30 minutes against Keita, Thiago and Fabinho, more than held their own, played really well, looked comfortable, so encouraging.
I just want to ask you about Martial, because there was real doubts whether he'd even get a chance under Ten Hag, whether after his loan spell at Sevilla didn't work out at all, whether he might just get moved on. But again, yes, the opposition, the players that are up against weren't exactly the strongest Liverpool side, but you can't fault him. You mentioned there he's pressing, the intensity there. We know there's a player with Martial, don't we? We just want to see it, the effort and the consistency, and we certainly saw it last night. Do you think that there could be a pathway for him getting more regular games under Ten Hag?
Yeah, you hope so. I mean, maybe he felt like he'd got to a bit of stagnation at United, and a sort of new face in Erik Ten Hag, and someone who clearly is very hands-on with his coaching. He's in the middle of things. He's telling them exactly what he wants, and they haven't really had that with Ralf Rangnick or Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who kind of left it to the other coaches. Whilst obviously overseeing it all. So I wonder if maybe someone properly hands-on who feels like he can get the best out of him might give the fulfilment of what we think he can do. We've been here before. He's 26 now, so like he's not a young player anymore. He's like this should be his prime. And the Sevilla loan was disappointing, because you sort of thought, well, that's a fresh start under a manager that hopefully wants to play you regularly, but it didn't really work out. So. But as you say, the fact that you've not got Cristiano Ronaldo on this tour, he's the main guy now, isn't he, centre forward? I did notice he came off grimacing with a sort of holding his hip, and he sort of sat out a little bit of the training the day before, so you're sort of thinking, he's had his muscle injuries. That's been the big complaint about him, having injuries, taking perhaps too long to get back from injuries. So you hope that isn't a major thing and he can keep playing on this tour.
Just a quick one on David De Gea, because there's been some sort of question marks about him. Can he fit into Ten Hag's system? Ten Hag sort of set his stall out, didn't he, when he sort of said, "You're my number one, Dean Henderson can move on."
Yeah.
So it's obvious he's got faith in David De Gea. Again, I know it's less than one game, but what did you make of him and how he was sort of performing in this Ten Hag system?
Yeah, you saw him, didn't you, come out a bit further? I think even early on in the first half, he's coming out of his box and you're saying, "Oh, this is everyone sort of take a step back. Yeah. This is a bit of a new one." And he did it again in the second half. The young Liverpool striker, I think Bobby Clark, wasn't it, that was kind of closing him down. He came right to the touchline. And then obviously for the Darwin Núñez thing, where he ultimately injured himself, I think that was another one where he was off his line, kind of looking to get forward. And that's not his strength. So I suppose when the real action starts, if he tries to do that, we saw this with Joe Hart a little bit with Pep Guardiola. That was probably more passing the ball out with your feet rather than kind of coming off your line. But he tried that in pre-season. It didn't really work, and then he quickly got rid of him. Whether when the real action starts, David De Gea will have that confidence to keep doing that. We'll see, but that is obviously what Erik Ten Hag wants. You can see that he's told him that, and that's what Ajax have played with previously. It just enables the defence to be higher, the attack to press, from the front. So it is kind of instrumental, but at the same token, he also pulled off some really good saves, didn't he? And that's the number one thing that we ask of him, and he does it. He's back to his best in that regard. Yeah,
definitely, especially when one of them saves with his feet as well, which always seems to be a forte of his. What's the sort of the mood like around? You've been in the press conference with Ten Hag. You've obviously covered United for a little while now. I know it sounds a bit strange, but what is the sort of mood like when you sort of in those press conferences, you're speaking to the manager? Do you feel there is, I know it's a new era, but do you feel there is that positivity there?
Yeah, I mean, Erik doesn't give much away in press conferences, does he? I think he stared down one question in the press conference about Cristiano Ronaldo. It was one too many questions, maybe, and I think he was kind of making his point that he wanted to move on. But I don't think he's ever going to be different than that. That's what he was like at Ajax, kind of clipped with his answers, particularly in English. He's obviously perfectly excellent communicator, but it's not. You can tell that it's not his mother tongue. But yeah, I think ultimately the atmosphere feels kind of positive. I think the players have clearly, buying into what he's trying to do with them. It was really educative watching that open training session, because you could see the way it split down with Steve McLaren kind of, as one of his lieutenants, Mitchell van der Gaag as another of his lieutenants, and there was a bit of fun, wasn't there, with the press-ups, the punishments in that regard, and also the kind of training methods, clearly distinctive, clearly with a purpose to them. Listen, it's not revolutionary, I don't think. I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer probably was doing this kind of stuff, but at the same time, with him being in there absolutely and very in command of what he wants from his players, I do think that's a bit of a shift from what we've had previously. So I think the people around the club are happy with what he's doing so far. Clearly the signings are a major factor though, right? Like you have Tyrone Malacia is the only one that they've got on tour so far, a left back. He does need fresh blood in that squad, Frenkie de Jong being the main one that he's after, and he mentioned that in his press conference. That was the one thing he did give away, I think, that he said we need midfielders and we're also looking at offence. So two kind of major parts of the team.
You mentioned there Cristiano Ronaldo. We've done well, we've spoke for 5 minutes without mentioning him.
I keep trying to, don't I?
Yeah. What's your take on this? Because obviously I think the official line is personal reasons. We don't know whether that's true or not. I'll take it at face value. He's got some family issues going on. We also had this story about him wanting to leave. He's not happy. He's not got Champions League football. Do you think we're going to see Cristiano Ronaldo staying at Manchester United, or do you feel that this is the sort of the beginning of the end?
I don't know. Fluctuated. I mean, your thing is, where's he going to go? David Ornstein at the Athletic, our place, wrote about Chelsea's interest being serious and genuine. So there's that possibility, I suppose. But would United really sell to Chelsea? They're absolutely adamant he's not for sale. They've reiterated that numerous times. Erik ten Hag came out with it and said that he's planning for him. Obviously, they kind of have to say those things, but then at the same time, if you keep saying them, then you kind of have to stand by it, really.
Yeah.
We are told that the family reasons, the personal reasons, there is a genuine aspect to that. So you have to absolutely accept that. Clearly, the wider context is that he has said that he wants to leave. Whether that's softened in recent days, whether he's looked at the situation and thought, actually, maybe I can't get anywhere else. Maybe he's thought, well, if United get more signings in, then I'm more happy to stay and keep going. That would go a little bit against the fact that the idea is that he wants to play Champions League football, when he's 37, 38. So, I guess you've got to put a question mark against that. But it's a funny one, isn't it? Like, does he come straight back into the team? I guess, right? He has to. It's Cristiano Ronaldo. But it would perhaps be a little bit of a kind of a weird vibe in the squad if he kind of came straight back in and here I am. We don't expect him on tour, do we now?
No.
So it's kind of when they get back, they'll have to have talks, won't they? I was surprised that Erik ten Hag hadn't spoken to him yet after the news had come out that he wanted to leave. Whether that's because he thinks it's on Cristiano Ronaldo. If he wants to get in touch with me, I'll leave him to it. If he's having sort of family issues, leave him to it. At the same time, could Cristiano Ronaldo call him direct and say, listen, Gaffer, this is what I'm thinking? They've had a conversation already at the end of last season, which was productive. So you sort of think there's a bit of a relationship there. So that is kind of interesting, and I guess that first conversation will go a long way to figuring out exactly what happens with Cristiano Ronaldo in the team and sort of for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it does seem strange. Like you said, they've had that conversation, and as far as I know, it was a positive one, like you said. And he was under the assumption that Ronaldo was happy to stay, and then now a month later or whatever it is, he's saying he wants to leave when he knows it, or he knew it the first time we did have Champions League football. Maybe right, maybe there is something in the, there could be something in the signings as well. On that front, Frenkie de Jong is the one that everyone's talking about, the most obvious one. You mentioned there that in the press conference it was obvious that that's the one United are working on. What's the latest on that? I know it changes very quickly. Do you feel that's going to get over the line? Because we're hearing about this wage issue where Barcelona owe him a bit of money. Do you think that's an obstacle that can be sort of overcome?
You think so, wouldn't you? Just because Barcelona ultimately are sellers that want to sell. We've heard the Rafinha deal looks to be completed for them from Leeds, and that's a lot of money. So where they're going to get that from, I think a player sale instantly helps them in that regard. And United are obviously willing buyers. Frenkie de Jong situation, I was told that he was open to the move. There's other people that are saying, he kind of needs to be a little bit more convinced. Clearly, if he's got, whatever it is, £80 million in owed wages, that's a big significant reason to want to stay somewhere. So if that can get resolved, then maybe that is the kind of key to unlock it all. We saw John Murtough and Richard Arnold over in Barcelona, meeting with Barcelona executives to try and finalise this deal, which is a significant, point really, because they're not going all that way for no reason for a bit of paella, are they? They're going to try and sort the deal out. They might have had some at the same time, which is, fair play to them if they do. But it's a major deal. I think that if they can get it over the line and add Christian Eriksen, add Lisandro Martinez in terms of the defender that Erik ten Hag wants, then you kind of go, okay, they've absolutely backed the manager there. They're clearly his signings, and that's an okay transfer window. But Frenkie de Jong is the kind of crucial one. They've kind of left all their other business after that. That's the big one that's going to cost the most money. It's going to transform, in Erik ten Hag's mind, his midfield and what he can do with his team. So if they don't get him, he's kind of left scratching a little bit. Where do they go from there, and will that cause issues further down the line? But as I say, with them going out to Barcelona, with Barcelona being willing sellers and also buying players, you sort of think now that it should get done at some point. Right,
we'll get back to that in a second, but first of all, we need to talk about the burning issue there, and your issues won't be burning if you use Manscaped on your balls. Because this summer, you need to look after yourself, don't you? You need to groom yourself, and thanks to Paddock, you can. Using the code PADDOCKTOUR, you can go to Manscaped, you get 20% off and free shipping, and they're giving away loads. You get a free travel bag, you get the boxer brief, so you get the crop preserver, you get the crop toner, because let's face it, we've all been there in the summer, bit hot, bit sweaty, bit smelly down there. Listen, it happens to the best of us, even me. But thanks to Manscaped, you can look after yourself, you can smell lovely, you can look clean and crisp, and you can have none of that little sort of nicks and cuts because of their anti-nick technology as well. You've got the Lawnmower 4.0, you've got the crop preserver, the crop toner, you've got the anti-chafing boxer briefs. What more do you want? You've even got the travel bag to put it all in, and you've got 20% off, and you've got free shipping. So it is all happening, because you don't have to have one of those situations where you're there with the torch on your phone trying to do your clean your bits, because they've got the LED light on there as well. They've got the multifunctional on-off switch, because let's face it, you don't want it just only on or only off. You want it on or off. So go out and check out Manscaped. There's a link in the description. The code's PADDOCKTOUR. Your balls will thank you. Well, let's get back to this interview. Just what's the sort of mood around transfers you feel? Do you feel the club are pretty confident with these transfers? Because you mentioned there the De Jong one, there's other ones, there's Eriksen obviously, which is sort of looks like it's nearly there. There's talk of maybe Martinez as well. Do you feel like there's a positivity around these moves at the club? Because there's a little bit of pressure on it. Like you said, you've got to back this manager, and if you're coming in with this sort of, there's a new era here, there's new backroom sort of people overseeing everything, and you don't get the marquee signing, you're only getting sort of the fringe players. It doesn't bode well, does it, really? Yeah,
I mean, it is a really complex one, the De Jong one, in terms of the deferred wage, in terms of Barcelona playing games. You've got Juan Laporta coming out saying he's not for sale, he's our player, and clearly behind the scenes he's absolutely trying to sell him, and we saw it with Lionel Messi in the same situation. He left a week later or whatever it was. So I do have some understanding of the fact that this is a complex one that wasn't just going to get done overnight. At the same time, they probably have to think, if it isn't going to get done, we need to walk away and we need to act decisively and then go on to another target. So there's that as the counterpoint. But I do feel like with all those players, Christian Eriksen's agreed to come, 3-year deal. I think it's just the final medical terms,
Yep.
I guess that's taking a little bit longer than it would in normal circumstances. Lisandro Martinez, again, wants to come. He's told Ajax twice that he wants to come to the Premier League. Arsenal seem like maybe they're not going to go as high as Manchester United. He's clearly a player that Erik ten Hag's worked with and he likes him, so you think that's an extra pull for him. So you kind of think with those four, ultimately you'd hope they should get done, but as you say, if you don't get the main one, then it kind of looks a little bit more underwhelming.
What's the script with Anthony? Because we keep hearing about him. The prices being bandied about seem a little excessive. I think Ajax was talking about €70 million, which for a player who's had 2 good seasons does seem a bit much. But do you think there is any sort of truth in those rumours, or any sort of desire from United and Erik ten Hag to try and bring him to Old Trafford?
Yeah, I think they have looked at him for sure. Erik ten Hag likes him, and with the uncertainty over Cristiano Ronaldo, as he mentioned in his press conference, offence being a kind of area that he wants to enhance. Because you looked at last night, and really that was the only front three he could play. I'm thinking Elanga possibly, but it's Rashford, Sancho, Martial with Bruno number 2. It's a good front four. It's like it's a front four that you think it's really technical, it could work, but there's not much beneath that. So I can see why you would want to supplement that. At the same time, as you say, 70 million, even 80 million euros, sort of hearing. Ajax have pushed up the price of Martinez. It was sort of starting out at 50 million euros. It's creeping up to 55 million. So there's that as well. And will they let both go in the same summer? I would be sort of cautious about that. Player that like, but from what I can hear, it's too expensive at the time being.
Just on Martinez, you mentioned there about Ten Hag was saying, we need players in midfield and offence as well. Martinez, we know he's a centre-back, can play in midfield. I don't want to get ahead of it, but do you think that if he does come, he could be used in midfield? Because there's a lot of people saying, well, maybe he's a defensive midfielder for us because, we do have centre-backs and you'd think that Varane, Maguire and maybe even Lindelof have got a good chance of starting. Where do you see Martinez fitting in if he does come? I know it's a big if.
All I hear is centre back,
right.
Which I know 5'9" in the Premier League. You're kind of going okay. Tyrell Masia 5'6". Listen, I know it's not all about height. Barcelona tore United to shreds, didn't they? With a team of 5'5", I think.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you kind of think in the Premier League on a regular basis, it's a question mark. I think that's why people are perhaps also going, right, is he then a defensive midfielder? And he has played there for Ajax, obviously. I think Ten Hag's been on record, though, as saying it's not his position. He is a centre back. Loves his aggression, loves what he brings to that Ajax team in terms of being on the front foot and clearly on the ball, and his passing is very good. So that obviously compensates for perhaps a couple of inches that he might not be able to jump as high as a Harry Maguire or a Virgil van Dijk or whoever. So that's what I've heard. But listen, I don't know when he gets in the building, if he gets in the building, sorry. Then I guess they'll have a look at it and maybe they could figure something out, because clearly defensive midfield is a position that United need to strengthen, but it doesn't seem like they're in the market for anybody at the moment.
You mentioned there about the fact we don't have loads of options up front. Elanga's one who can play, either on the left or right. We also saw some of the other youngsters coming in midfield, like Zidane Iqbal, Charlie Savage. Do you think these players, especially the likes of Iqbal and Savage, could get much of a chance this season, especially if we don't get the signings we want? Because, listen, I know it's very early, we've played one game, but they are talented youngsters. They've obviously done well so far. Do you think there could be a chance for him under Ten Hag?
Possibly, yeah. This is what pre-season's about. It's an opportunity for them, and they've got 45 minutes and done well. If they kind of build on that, then you never know. He's obviously trusted youngsters at Ajax before. They are only 19. So you kind of feel like the next step would probably be a loan, to a championship club hopefully, and they can get the kind of experience that James Garner got at Nottingham Forest. So he's another one that wasn't playing, I think, through injury. It must have been because he wasn't on the bench and wasn't with this squad sort of warming up. So he's another player in that position that's done his hard yards at Nottingham Forest, and then that's another question. Would he need another loan or would he go out again? So he's probably one that I'd say is ahead of them in that regard. But that's what pre-season's about. Have a bit of experiment, I suppose, and see how players adapt and see if they come to fruition. I was really encouraged by both of them last night, probably particularly Zidane Iqbal, just because the way he kind of offered for the ball and he looked really composed, picked a couple of nice passes, wriggled out of tight spaces, had a good training session the day before in that regard. Charlie Savage, doing a Maradona turn that Robbie, I think, mentioned on Twitter, saying where did he get that from, which I admire. I like his character in that regard. Yeah. And also his left-footedness is kind of a thing that I think can't be disregarded, because Matic is gone, Mata's gone, a bit of balance in that midfield, can't go amiss. But I do think a loan would probably be the next step. In terms of sales, do you see anyone going out the door? Because there was talk earlier on in the summer that maybe Martial or maybe Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Axel Tuanzebe is a player that's been spoken about as moving on. Have you hearing anything about sales? Do you think that there's anything where United are looking at? Ten Hag's already saying one or two you can go. Yeah, it's been quiet, hasn't it, on that front? Martial was the one that you go, he's the high ticket item that you could get a bit of money in for, but now you're kind of thinking you can't really afford to let him go because he is, the numbers are kind of low. Axel Tuanzebe will probably be the one that I think he's clearly a very good player. He's been at United for a long time though, and he's not broken through, so you're sort of thinking if you can get good money for him, now's the time. And this is what United needs to be better at, in my opinion. I think they did quite well with Andres Pereira. Sale 10 million with the sell-on clause. But you look at what Liverpool do. Nico Williams, 17 million to Nottingham Forest. They do very well, don't they? They've always done that, haven't they? Like Solanke and players like that. They just move them on for Harry Wilson.
Yeah.
and then City have signed a youngster, sold a youngster to Southampton for 14 million that to be honest, I hadn't really heard of before. So, and they're getting 14 million for this kid. So United, could be better at that. And I think the likes of Twanzebe, Wan-Bissaka was one. I think that you look at that right back position. Dalot played last night for the first in the kind of what we thought was the kind of the first 11. So there's a debate to be had there. Ethan Laird's on tour. He's another one that's young kid that has shown real good promise at right back, more attacking, good on the ball, but he's had his injury problems, so he just needs to stay fit. So I do wonder if that I do think Wan-Bissaka could be sold. Crystal Palace are interested for a lot of money, but I don't know whether it comes to it. I'm not hearing anything that's ongoing or advancing. It's kind of like the main focus is on signings at the moment.
Sounds good. Listen, just finally, we've obviously got some more games left. It's over to Australia next. What do you think is the sort of most important from this pre-season? Do you think it's a case of Erik ten Hag getting his tactics in ingraining his squad, seeing the levels of the players, or a bit of everything? Yeah,
certainly the tactics. I mean, we saw, like I said, we got a window into that, didn't we, in training? Really interesting. I think because that's his principles. Having a team with a clear method of playing. He wants to keep building that, and I think they're thinking that Australia is going to provide a really good block of training for that. The temperature's not too bad. It's kind of quite cold actually, I think, at times. So that's good. You can work him hard. He's been doing double training sessions, hasn't he, to try and get the fitness into them, try and get the ideas into their brains. So I think that's his main thing, and also just getting a bit of confidence around the group. And a 4-0 win against Liverpool is going to do that. It's going to give him a boost. It's going to think, okay, actually, we're buying into this. This is, we're doing the things he's telling us, and it's kind of working. Yeah, it's a friendly. Yeah, Liverpool changed the team loads, but listen, it's 4-0 against Liverpool. Yeah. It's a nice feeling. So if you can come away from it with confidence and with some tactics and fitness instilled in them, then brilliant. Definitely.
Listen, I'm going to bask in the glory of that 4-0 friendly win against Liverpool.
Have you bought the mug yet?
Yeah.
DVD.
Yeah. It's not every day you see your team win the Bangkok Century Cup. Yeah,
the big one.
5
years without a trophy ended in one game.
That's it. There you go, Laurie. Always great chatting to you. Make sure you're checking out Laurie Whitwell at The Athletic. Loads of great articles, loads of good stuff on there. Not just Laurie, of course. You've got David Ornstein, you've got Andy Mitten, you've got all the top tier talent on there. Don't forget as well to subscribe to the channel. We'll be here for the rest of the tour. We'll be going to Melbourne, we're going to Perth, we'll be going to Norway, and we'll be back at Old Trafford, of course. So make sure you're subscribing to the channel. This has been the Tier 1 podcast with Laurie Whitwell. Thanks for watching.